Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts, support your mental health, and learn the tips and tricks that thousands of parents have used to craft their ideal birth. We will answer all of your questions, the scary ones and the weird ones, to help calm your fears and feel confident going into your birth. I'm going to help you redefine what birth and motherhood looks like and how to embrace your journey. I've intentionally crafted a list of experts to help you navigate pregnancy, explore your birth options, and plan for postpartum so that it can be a time of soaking in your tiny human. We're going to go there on all the hard topics so that you can dive deep into finding your confidence and freeing yourself from fears around birth. With over 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I created this podcast as a way to share the resources parents need to make educated and informed decisions about their care in pregnancy and childbirth. This is a birth community driven by evidence-based information and research in hopes to help you explore your options, understand your rights, and know what choices you have along the way when it comes to birth and beyond. I'm your host, HeHe. Now let's get to the good stuff. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about water safety. Really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just telling you that I've never covered this topic before on the podcast, which is really surprising considering my background, although that was a long time ago, but it is still just a piece of, once you are in water safety, it's like something that just stays with you. It's a core piece of who you are. And I'm very excited to bring this to our audience. I had put out a question box previously, and our audience had some really wonderful questions. And one of the overwhelming senses that I got is that parents know that it's a thing and it is really scary, but I don't know that it's something that a lot of families are putting a lot of thought into. And you and I both know how important water safety is. So I'd like to start, before we dive too far into the conversation, with maybe some quick drowning stats that parents should be aware of. This will help set the stage for why water safety is so important.
Sure. Yeah. And I appreciate that. You're right. It doesn't get the year-round buzz that some of the things tend to get. In May, it's Water Safety Month. We're always talking about it there. You start really thinking about it in the summertime, but you're right. It's a year-round thing. It's an ever-present thing. Kids see water all the time. So I'm sure most people know drowning is the number one cause of death among children's ages 1 to 4, and the second leading cause of death between ages of 5 and 14. So heavy fact to start with, but that's what we're here to do today, right? Is really talk about it. Participation in formal swim lessons actually can reduce the rate of drowning by 88% in kids who are ages 1 to 4. So just that, it doesn't even say what swim lesson has to be. That acclimation is a good swim lesson, right? 69% of children younger than age 5, this is an interesting one, were not expected to be at or in the pool at the time of their journey.
I saw that stat, yes. And I saw that even more of those children, a higher percent of that number was last seen in their home. Like the parents had just seen them. And then I think it just shows how quick it happens. And yes, oh my gosh. Okay, sorry to interrupt, but I saw that and my mouth dropped to the floor.
I know. It makes my hair stand on end. It really does. It's the old adage of like, it happens when you're least expecting it type situation. The American Academy of Pediatrics now recommends swim lessons as young as 1. They've lowered that recommendation, but a lot of programs start, like here at Tots, we start as young as 4 months. The earlier you can get a kid in the water is the recommendation, but definitely by 1, just start building that building block. I think it's important to note, we'll talk a little bit later, but we talk drowning, but there's also non-fatal drowning. Non-fatal drowning can range from no injuries to serious injuries. So it's an important part of the water safety journey that we talk about here all the time, but it can look different. Drowning can look different from case to case. I think it's interesting to point out that children with autism are 160 times more likely to drown than children without it. I have a huge place in my heart in our program. We have an adaptive program for kids with special needs. So I just want to put that out there because we can't run from those numbers. We can try to fix those numbers. That's the goal. And then swimming pools, most children ages, and then it only takes 1 to 2 inches of water for a child to be able to drown in it, depending on their size and their age. Scary facts, but those are the cold hard numbers. So I'm glad we get to talk about it today. We can raise its level of consciousness in the common conversation. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. So drowning is very scary. We talked about that. And I think that I agree with you. Instead of being scared of it and running from it, because it does happen so often and when you least expect it, raising your awareness of how to prevent drowning, I think, is really the key. So for me, I equate swim lessons for your children and having discussions about drowning prevention in your home to CPR, having CPR as a parent. For me, it's a non-negotiable. You have a small child in your home, small children will put things in their mouth that increases your risk of, having a choking episode. You need to know CPR.
Definitely.
Swim lessons are the same thing for me. Can you dive a little bit more into the idea of children are around water all the time? Talk to us about some places that drowning can happen that maybe we uh, haven't thought of, because you had mentioned, yeah, it's year round. And I thought, oh, yeah. One of the best times to do swim lessons is actually in the winter when you have nothing else to do. You're trapped indoors.
Sure.
Come on and get in a heated pool and teach your child swim lessons so that in the spring they're ready, right? They're already pool ready and you don't have to do the work to get them there. Talk to us about the places that maybe drowning
Sure.
happens that we're not expecting.
Yeah, great question. We do a lot of water safety presentations. And so sometimes we engage with the kids asking them, like, where do you see water? And we'll get a lot of common answers. Massachusetts being a beach bound state, the most common answer we get is at the beach. We see water at the beach for sure. We see water at the lake. We see water in a pond, in a stream, or in a river. But I'll tell you what's interesting. The most important one that honestly, 9 times out of 10, kids don't say, and we always have to reiterate to them is the bathtub. I'm like, there's a place that you guys might see maybe a couple times a week. You get clean in there. There might be a lot of water. There might be a little bit of water. Do you know where that might be? And then sometimes they really put it together. The bathtub or the shower. The kids are in a bath or a shower a lot, and that access to water, like I said earlier with that stat, you only need 1 to 2 inches. If a kid doesn't have the skills and they go face first in 2 inches of water, it might as well be fully submerged head. Water in tons of different places, sometimes where you're least expecting
Yeah, that's so scary,
it.
and it's fast. It's fast. It's less than a minute, you
Sure.
guys. We have to
Yep.
really be there on top of it to right the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, you had mentioned different types of drowning. We've got fatal drowning,
Yep.
non-fatal drowning. We also get a lot of questions about dry drowning. Can you talk to us
Sure.
about the differences of all of those?
Yeah, for sure. So dry drowning is a common question that we get here too. What does it look like? How does it present? What should the follow up be? We get a lot of questions. There's a lot of information out there. Sometimes it can be good and bad information overload. But dry drowning is one of those situations where a kid has a type of drowning incident. Right? They're wearing water wings and they slip out. They're running on the side of the pool and they fall in. They're on a float with their cousin and they get tipped over. Right? So it's an incident where they are potentially underwater. It doesn't matter how it happened, but they are underwater and there's either a save or they grab a wall or there is some type of interjection where maybe someone has to grab them, right? So usually good or bad. The good about dry drowning is that it happens pretty quickly. You would start to see the signs within minutes to an hour. It's an inflammation of the lungs. It's a bit of a rattling cough. It presents pretty quickly, but that doesn't mean that it will always present quickly. So I think the big portion of the dry drowning piece is just to remain vigilant, stay abreast of what's going on with your child or whoever you're tending to in that situation. Listen for their breathing, make sure they're not getting those shallow breaths. Listen for the rattling of what could be potentially water in the lungs. If you have questions, go see your doctor. It's definitely, you hear about it because it happens. It's not super common, but if you don't stay on top of it could become something a little bit bigger and that inflammation could grow into a much larger problem.
Yeah. And then the fatal versus non-fatal, is that truly just as straightforward as fatal obviously equals a death and non-fatal is
Unfortunately.
something that you're survived?
Correct. So non-fatal would, be thankfully that they're still with us, but that is when you do run the risk of potentially issues after the fact, whether or depending on how long they were underwater or what it may look like after the situation. But those non-fatal incidents are where you run the risk of seeing dry drowning, usually.
Yeah. Would you say that for that monitoring period that we're still watching and monitoring their lungs for 24 hours after that incident is a
Definitely.
good
Hmm.
amount? And if anything, what if it takes off, call your pediatrician, but if we're
Hmm.
good at 24 hours, then we can assume that they're good. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, that usually is the consensus. And so you just remain vigilant there and you're just
Sure.
paying attention to what.
Yeah, sure. Scary stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
As a lifeguard, when I was a lifeguard, one of the I think, I don't know what I want to call it. It's almost sneaky. It's subtle and it's unintentional. You don't realize that you're doing it,
Totally.
but it's distractions for you as the parent, as the caregiver. Nannies do it, grandparents do it, babysitters do it. Distractions like your phone. You got to get
Sure.
off your phone at the pool, you guys. Like, again, it only takes a couple seconds. So if you're at a place that doesn't have lifeguards on duty, you are the
Hmm.
lifeguard. Stay off your phone. For me, I always watch parents be distracted by other parents, and it's
Hmm.
awkward, right? Because you want to be engaged in conversation. You want to be able to say hi to your neighbor that you also bumped into at the pool, but again, you're on guard. You need to be watching your kids. So, can we talk a little bit about distractions and what parents can do to still maybe be friendly, but also keep their eye on their children at the pool? Because that's a really hard thing to
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah, there's the fun of the pool. You usually go with company. You like
Mhm.
to hang with people there, right? It's summertime, and I totally get it. And you're right. We live in a day and age of so many distractions. So many distractions. The biggest one is obviously the phone. Yeah, put those phones down. I That could probably be said for tons of different areas in our life, especially at the pool. Put that phone down. Your top priority is that kid, those kids, whoever you're there with, right? Another thing we talk about often for distractions to try to minimize that is designate a water watcher,
Mm,
right? If you are there with multiple families, put yourself on a rotation, right? Because the second part of your question was, how do you handle those conversations if it is with an adult? Sometimes those conversations are negated by just designating a water watcher, because then that person doesn't have to feel bad or feel bad telling someone they need to end the conversation. And sometimes those conversations don't even come up because the other adults know that Tyler is the water watcher this 20 minutes. Now, fairness, that water watcher should be a little bit of a rotation, maybe every 20 minutes. There should be clear communication about that. Sometimes we'll even give people wristbands if they want to be the water watcher. You could have fun with it, right? The person holding the ducky is the water watcher, but that water watcher comes with some heavy responsibilities, right? It's you really are watching. You're in the same way that a lifeguard scans their zone. You're scanning, right? I'm not saying you got to watch every kid, but if you're there with four, make sure you count four bobbing heads every time you're staring in your zone. The water watcher is that really big piece. With our lifeguards, we talk about distractions often because they come in sometimes big and small sizes, right? So say you're the water watcher and you're laying on your lounger. You have two kids, right? You got Johnny swimming here and Samantha's in the water. Samantha gets out because she needs to tell you something. She's standing directly in front of you. You can no longer see Johnny. Totally unintentional, right? It's just a conversation. Your daughter wants a sandwich and she wanted to get out, whatever it may be. So for our lifeguards, we try to always talk about if you need to have a conversation, it's a shoulder to shoulder. It's never someone in front of you, someone in your line of sight from the pool. So try to manage distractions that are easily presentable. But then there's also ones that you might not see coming. The sun, and I forgot my sunglasses. You guys might need to move to a different table, right? Or a loud group just sat down in front of you and you don't think you're going to be able to hear a cry out from your kid because they're a little bit younger. You might need to reposition yourself. So I know that's a little bit inconvenient, but thinking about the alternative, having to move a couple seats really isn't that bad. So the distractions are just so hard. We live in a day and age of tons of distractions. So the water watcher piece, the phones, and just anything that could step in your line of sight that might get in your way, for sure. Those are the big distractions that definitely pop into my head.
yeah. When I think about, I think communication between adults at the pool, it's also when you have those distractions, handing off that water watcher spot, handing off the person and saying, "Oh, I'm going to get so and so a sandwich. You're on pool duty," or you
Right.
have these three children and name them by name. It's also who's actually watching the children, whether you are distracted or not. Are you
Yeah,
watching or am I watching? And I think that's often lost in translation too. If you please don't, but if you were to look up drowning stories, a lot of times the communication is really something that was missed between
yeah.
adults and nobody was watching the baby or
Hmm.
the child. And that's how the drowning ultimately happened. So, in order to prevent that, just make sure that you are checking in with everyone. Never assume that it's not you and never assume that someone else is watching the kids around the water, which is super important.
For
Okay,
sure.
you had mentioned water wings and like swim arm floaties, and I am super duper anti water wings. Matter of fact, one time about, gosh, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago, maybe even longer than that, my family was at Disney World. We were on vacation. I was not an active lifeguard at this point, and I was walking by the pool, and there was a little child that was hanging by her water wings, and I made a save at Disney World when I was there on
Wow.
vacation.
Wow.
Another time I was in the Bahamas with my family, and in the lazy river, there was a child trapped under the floaty, and the lifeguards were not seeing them. I made a save then as well. You never know when these things are going to strike, but there are things that increase the risk of drowning. Water wings being one of those things. I absolutely despise them and I think that they're terrible. I do believe that parents that put them on their child have every good intention,
Sure.
but they are actually very dangerous. Talk to us about your philosophy and your opinion on water wings and other kind of maybe devices that parents might
Sure.
explore as an option.
Sure. We are in the same headspace for sure. So I am very anti-flotation device. I
Them?
don't all of them. We
Really?
have, yeah, our adage is that the safest swimmer is a swimmer in the water with the parent. In the water with the parent. Now, I know that there's different outliers to that situation. Okay, I'm going with 3 kids, and sure, and I'm not saying that all water wings are bad. I'm just saying that if you have an option of no water wings and in with the
Mhm.
parent, that's always going to be your safest option. Always going to be your safest option. The water wings, the old school ones that are just on the arms, those I'm sure everyone has seen. Those are really susceptible to being able to slide right off. If a kid jumps up, old school pencil jump in, they're coming right off. And also, what people don't talk about often with the water wings is the false sense of security that it gives a kid. It's great that they can feel themselves bobbing and they're slowly moving their feet and it feels like they're kicking, but that's not swimming. And when they get into the water, they think that they can swim, which is sometimes more dangerous than a kid who's fearful. A kid
Mhm.
who thinks they
Mhm.
can swim but cannot swim is a kid who will jump right in, or a kid who
Mhm.
will walk off a bench, or a kid who will go down to explore the pool when you're not watching because they think they can swim. And so that's why they can be really dangerous on the back end. Not that they will hurt you or anything like that, but it's that false sense of security. Some of them are better than others. Obviously, our recommendation is Coast Guard approved, but there's tons of different ones out there on the market. The ones that keep kids completely vertical can be tough because then when it's time to get them swimming, we're trying to get them horizontal and they are used to having their legs a little bit lower. But ultimately, our thought process on water wings and flotation devices is that we only use any type of flotation device here that's an aid, like a kickboard or a noodle that we put like a 8-month-old in for a kicking device just to hold them up. But other than that, our recommendation is to just be in the water with the kids if you can. And that goes back to breaks. That goes
Yeah.
back to communication, that right, because no, and it's something you got me thinking when you said it. You said about the communication. It also goes back to knowing your own capacity, right?
Mhm.
Hey, I can water watch, but only for the next 10 minutes. I got to take a break. You got to communicate that, right? Just like it goes with the water wings. It's all about communication with the kids and with the parents that you're with, and knowing your own capacity. If you're going to be one person with 3 non-swimmers, yeah, you might have to figure out a rotation, a way to take breaks, or introduce some safe alternatives. And that's totally okay. You got to do what works for you. And that's
Yeah.
what's important to know. But it's also a little post check for yourself. Can I do this? What do I need? Am I going to be able to do it? So it's that internal communication and communication with who you're there with. Um, that's our thought on floaties.
Yeah, cool. It feels very aligned to me.
Yeah.
I don't know that I consider myself anti all flotation devices, but you do bring interesting points. There are pros and cons to every choice of kind of those additives, those tools
Hmm.
that you have. And just as long as you're willing to basically help your child unlearn those things and then relearn the right
Sure.
way at a later date, then that's going to be one of those risk pros cons that you're willing to take on, right? Um,
Definitely.
yeah, okay, interesting thoughts there. We keep mentioning it, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask. What are your tips to someone who is going to the pool with 3 non-swimmers or 2 just wild and out toddlers? Maybe they're twins. What do we do, and what are your tips for parents of multiples? Especially parents that are going to the pool just one parent on multiple children.
For sure. One, no, like I said, know your capacity, right? Know what's your own personal bandwidth, right? Are we
Mhm.
staying for an hour? Are we staying for 2 hours? If you're familiar with your pool, you can sometimes use your pool's policies and procedures to help you out. What I mean by that is, so like we live in an apartment. My apartment takes an adult swim every 10 till the top of the hour. That's a great way to get a kid out of the pool. Hey, when the whistle blows this next hour, we're going home. That's the rules. We're packing up, right? So the clear communication with to your kids is also very important. And I would say if you're going to be bringing a handful to the pool, let the staff know. Tell the lifeguard, like, hey, I am going to be in solo. We're going to hang right here in this shallow area. But if you need to, not reprimand my kid, but if you can help me, if Johnny's running and you need to tell him to stop, please, I can use all the help that I can get. So those people are resources there for you. You might feel like you're alone, but there's a lot of people out there for you. You're not alone. You know what I mean? So letting them know, and then also staying in a safe place, right? If you have 3 non-swimmers, let's say you have 3 non-swimmers, but one is independent. For today, that one independent swimmer might have to hang back in the area where the place with the younger swimmers are going to be hanging, right? And it's all you can do in that moment. There might be a day where you can take a more advanced swimmer, or the kids are down for a nap and they're strolling, you can get back in or something like that. But it's all about knowing where you're going to be and really planning that out. Breaks so important. They're your best friend. Hey, we need to take a break, whether it be to rescreen, whether it be to get out and drink some water, to go try and use the bathroom. Integrate breaks. If your kids can make it for all the way until adult swim, if that's every hour, you could definitely use that to your advantage. But if not, take your own breaks. You could just, but really laying that out there. And then knowing where you are in the pool, knowing where you are as far as depth goes, as far as where you are to a lifeguard, where you are to your stuff, your resources, whatever you brought with you. If they're going to be in floaties or puddle jumpers, or if they're going to be in a float, close to a wall, close to your stuff, so you're not too far away from it should they need to get out. Those would be the big things for me, is like really just, I think, planning, which most parents probably do, really planning it out and being strategic. If you don't know the pool you're going to, I would take some time to acclimate before you go. Really use that time where you might be screening the kid down to really take a look around. Where are the guards? Where are they sitting? How many are there? Ooh, if that area feels a little bit less guarded to you, hang in an area where there is a guard. But staying close to the steps will always be your best friend.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I want to circle back to one question that dropped into my head about the water watchers when parents are scanning the pool. So as a lifeguard, I was taught to scan every 10 seconds. Parents, should they be following the same rule? Every 10 seconds you're counting heads. Every 10 seconds you're making sure you say your entire roster of children that you are in control of.
Yeah, that's a great point. Lifeguards are taught to scan, do a head count. There's tons of different type of lifeguarding strategies, but lifeguarding is mainly for scanning for the whole zone. So it's for sometimes parents who are water watching, they might be overwhelmed feeling like they're looking at the whole zone. So you really can focus on the kids. It's probably a parent's just natural superpower to scan also everybody. That's just how I think we are once we've had children. But really the head count or counting, saying the names of the people that you're there with, but constant scanning, exactly. That holds true for anybody. Whether you want to count, you're scanning the zone, or you're counting the kids that you're there with, the sentiment remains the same. Absolutely scanning across 10, always counting the heads. See, you haven't forgotten.
Yeah, I haven't forgotten. Like I say, it's always in me. Anytime that my family's around water now, I
Yeah,
still find myself scanning and I try and turn it off, but it's just one
it's
of those
impossible.
things that you don't.
I
Yeah.
know. I
Yeah.
tell my wife all the time, it's hard for me to go to a pool for like relaxation and fun now, because it's always been my business life. So it's weird. I've been a lifeguard forever. I've taught lessons forever. So it's hard to go and just relax without giving it a critical analysis.
It is. I always say that lifeguarding was my favorite job. I didn't
Mhm.
know about what you do when I was picking jobs, but if I did, I very well might have had a different career path because I do say that it was always my favorite jobs.
I get it.
Okay, I'd like to transition to people with
Okay.
pools at their home because a lot of people either buy homes with pools or they want a pool. And I think that a lot of the drowning prevention comes with understanding the rules and the responsibility of having a pool in your home and maybe in your little community. So, can we talk about a couple of things that parents need to know about pool safety, whether it be in your backyard or it's just in your like neighborhood? What should parents be aware of as far as pool safety and owning a pool?
Cool. Yeah, I will give you some points, and then I'll skip to a curriculum piece here that I think is an important emphasis. That
Okay.
hopefully it'll all make sense, and I can round it out here on the podcast. So in water safety, we call them the ABCs here at Aqua Tots. A, adults. B, barriers. C, classes. So basically, what we're talking about is the B here, barriers. So most states and legislation has forced you to put a fence around the pool. That's if you have
Yes.
not, if you live in a state that has not gotten there, do it. Put the fence around the pool. There's tons of options. There are tons of options. From a just basic standpoint, make sure that fence is locked, make sure it's not scalable, make sure that the kid can't climb it. If it's one of the netting ones, make sure they literally can't run through it. Make sure that when they're in their big Tykes car, they're not going to plow right through the side of that fence. It has to be a little bit more durable. Kids will find a way. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So for the barriers piece, just having something on the outside. Another barrier that has gotten really common, they've been around for a long time. There's tons of different types of like wave detection software. You can get alarm systems that kind of are sitting on a pool. And if it detects that there has been a wave, now the good and bad there, it's a frog jumping in, make it go off. I don't know. But there's tons of different software that go along with it. Technology, it's 2024. Technology's gotten crazy. Just the digital everything. But there's a lot of like sound wave sensing technology out there that's another barrier for you. Obviously, barrier from a chemical standpoint, make sure your skimmer baskets are covered, make sure they're not cracked, make sure that's a huge tripping hazard. A lot of them screw in. I know here in Massachusetts they need to be screwed back in, so you pop that screw up, they're just stubbing their toe. So it seems so simple, but they stub their toe, they go to reach their toe, they fall in the pool. Boom, it happens. So that's another barrier piece for you. The part that I wanted to circle back on is here we often equate water to a highway here at Aqua
Mhm.
Tots. And in the same way that you wouldn't let a kid throw toys onto a highway, we're not going to let them throw toys into a pool. We actually will encourage parents to, if they're going to throw toys like in a bathtub, to help them clean them up and explain that we don't throw into the bathtub if we're not in the bathtub, because then we're going to want to go get those toys. It's going to get you excited. You're going to go get it. So we don't throw toys back in, and we wouldn't sit and play on the side of a highway unattended, so we're not going to let a kid sit. My son is 3.5 and he's decently independent, and he'll say, I just want to go stick my feet in until you're ready, right? Because I'll change him first. And I said, not until I'm down there. Not even sitting on the side, not even dipping our feet in. The temptation is too strong, because
Mhm.
dipping my feet turns to, I'm going to lean forward and just play a little bit, and whoop, Humpty Dumpty right off that wall. And just like we wouldn't let a kid play by a highway unattended, we're not going to let them play by a pool unattended. So that barrier, that fence, is going to enable you to check off that third step. But those first two, that's on a parent, right? Like that they have to know that there is that invisible barrier. We don't want to throw toys in there, because then we're tempted to go get those toys. And we don't want to sit there and kick and splash. It's just, oh, but mommy, it's just kicking and splashing. That could easily turn into just a little bit of eagerness, which Humpty dumps us right into the pool. The big piece is those barriers and some like the little things around the pool and the fence around the pool. We also want to make sure that the gate is always locked, and that, I think I may have already said this, but it's not like a fence that's scalable, like a kid can't climb right over it or something like that. A lot of those new ones, that's some recent recommendations that I've seen floating around in swim school world, because there's some nice new fences out that are collapsible and you can take them down in the winter, and aesthetics is important. But I saw a video on YouTube of a kid literally taking a little Tykes to the cars and just plowing right through the side of it. And I thought, never thought about that.
Mm.
I thought about the kid climbing it, but never like just plowing right into the side of it. But a kid thought of it. A kid thought
Yeah.
of it. So yeah, so
Yeah.
important.
It's like water, right? Like water will always find a way.
Yep.
Kids will always find a way. And imagine just, oh my God, I
Mm,
feel gutted now thinking I did the right thing. I put a
yeah.
fence up and it didn't do its job because
Hmm.
I didn't know enough to think about the kind of the durability. So goodness, I'm so
Yeah.
glad we're having this conversation so people can
Yeah.
think like that. That's nothing I would ever think about. I'd be like, I put up a fence, that was the
Yep.
rule. Into oh my gosh, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Okay,
Hmm.
we've talked about CPR too. Pool covers are another thing, but I think one thing that you and I both agree on is the best drowning prevention is actually teaching your child to swim.
Totally.
It really is the best, and it's not going to happen overnight. It is a process. It's not a one summer process. Typically, they need practice. Children are
Definitely.
learning things, right? Their bodies will get bigger from summer to summer. They have to relearn, not relearn everything, but they need to practice those skills. They didn't swim all winter. Let's talk a little bit about why it's so important that our children get swim lessons, other than everything that we have already chatted about. And I don't know if there is anything else, but just when you hear a parent say, I don't know, like, why would we need swim lessons? We don't have a pool in our backyard. We don't really ever go to the beach. What's your answer for parents when maybe they're on the fence about deciding if swim lessons is important to their family or not?
For sure. And that happens a lot. We'll get people who are just on the fence for a multitude of reasons. And I could give you a phrase that I love, which is that the world is 70% water and kids are
Mm.
100% curious. But it's that exact, it really is the reason why we encourage it. From a why should I get started so young standpoint, it's muscle memory, right? When a kid is
Mm.
in the womb, they are used to closing their epiglottis. We'll talk about this later, but they are used to it. So if you can get a kid in between 4 and 7 months, they will naturally, even with their mouth open, close that epiglottis because they're used to it in the womb. So there's the reason to start early, is because you can just build on that muscle memory that they already have, which is super exciting. And then it's just acclimation. The more you do it, the easier it will be, the more comfortable they will be. Fear is an interesting thing as it relates to swim lessons. Fear, we all know fear, it can be crippling sometimes, right? So we often see that a kid about 3.5, cognitively, they start to understand the fear that is associated with water, right? A 3-year-old that doesn't know the giantness that of water and what it can do doesn't have the scared fear that you see. They have the fear that might be something unknown. They have a
Mm.
fear that I don't want to leave mommy. Those are different
Mm.
types of fear. You get a kid who has not been in the water before, coming in at 4 or 5, they're fearful. They are scared. They can articulate the word drown. They understand that it is something that could hurt them bad. So what's tough, can it be overcome? Absolutely. The point, you're never too old to start. I want your audience to hear that loud and clear. So it started at any age, but you just got to look at fear differently, because a 4 or 5-year-old, they can understand what that water can do. And you got to break that down first. You got to really build trust and help them understand they can overcome the fear. Then the cool thing is they're so strong that once you overcome that, it clicks quickly. But as a 3-year-old, and starting them younger, you can get ahead of that fear, get them comfortable with the water before they ever become fearful. So our big thing is, the more you do it, acclimation, breath control, those are the obvious ones. The not so obvious one is really trying to beat that fear, because you get a kid in at 2, get them comfortable going underwater, they will never have that huge, they will learn as they get older and they will understand what it can do, but they will also know that they don't have to be fearful of that, because they can go underwater and they have that confidence behind it. So that's why we really encourage them to start young, because ultimately kids are smart and they get it. Like, they get it.
Yeah. One of my
Yeah.
favorite parts of being a lifeguard was doing swim lessons, and I typically got kids in there between 15 months and 3 years old, and they were just so much fun. And they
Hmm.
like the water. Most of
Yeah.
them really
Mhm.
like the water. Okay, I think a lot of people have questions about what would a swim lesson look like for a 4-month-old, right? What
Sure.
does it look like for a baby? So I would like for us to maybe go through each age group, and we can
Okay.
start at our babies, and I can step
Okay.
you through our different age groups if you are
Sure.
okay sharing what that would look like so parents can know what to expect. Does that sound good?
Totally.
Cool.
Let's work through it and see what we got.
Cool.
So our first 2 level, like I can give you here specifically, it's worth noting I've been teaching swim lessons for 20 years and I've taught tons of different curriculums. Obviously, I love the Aqua Tots curriculum, but I can give some comparison. You know what I mean? And as it relates to the young kids, I can give you what we do here, but it's pretty similar in most places. When you're getting in for a parent taught lesson, there's going to be student objectives and there's going to be parent objectives. Parent objectives might be how to properly hold my child, which hold is appropriate during which skill set, right? Here at Aqua Tots, we are a pro submersion school. So we introduce the idea of breath control on the first day. So for us here in levels 1 and 2, you're getting lots of breath control, lots of breath control. We do it through a process of what we call stimulating the epiglottal reflex. So there's a lot of science behind it. It's a bunch of cues of lift and lower stimuli, but we're doing that as early as 4 months. So not in a scary or intimidating way. Ultimately, the cool thing about parent taught lessons, if you're fearful, if someone's listening, I'm scared, I don't want to have to get in and do that. Remember, it's a parent taught lesson. You're in charge. You're holding the baby. You know what I mean? Like, we're encouraging you. We're going to explain why we're doing this and we're going to get you comfortable being able to do it. So the breath control piece is huge in all of our lessons. In level 1 and level 2, we don't see tons of Michael Phelps and Katie Ledecky. We're not seeing, but we do see kids can start as young as 4 months. We see tons of progress. What does progress look like at that age? Independent rolling onto their back in some instances, sometimes even rolling back to their stomach by the time they get to 30 months. But we will encourage that rollover as a safety piece. Here at Aqua Tots, we work a lot on grip strength. So they got to be able to turn and return to the wall, get back to the wall, hold on to the wall. Show me they can cup that coping for at least 5 seconds. So they get a lot of wall skills. They're getting back float. They're getting kicking, whether it be over the shoulder or in a noodle boat. They're getting rollover again towards the end. And they're getting some lift and lowers with pass and release back and forth to mom and or dad or guardian, and then back to the instructor to one, get them comfortable with someone who's not mom, dad, or guardian. And then also to just another reinforcement of the breath control piece. So the big ones for level 1 and level 2 are that student objective, parent objective. So you're both getting good goals and you're learning things and able to ask good questions. But the big ones would be breath control, front float, back float, submersion, obviously, and then the rollover with the big safety pieces.
And what is the age group for level 1 and 2? 4 months to 30 months?
So the level 1 is 4 months to a year, right? When you celebrate your first birthday, we graduate. And the level 2 is 13 months to 30 months. And then, right at 30 months, 2.5, they go straight into level 3.
And what does that entail?
Cool. Level 3 here is comfort. Comfortable floating on your back, comfortable floating on your stomach, comfortable with breath control, comfortable with depth perception, so getting an object off the bottom of the pool. And then we teach elementary backstroke, which is, we call it chicken star rocket. So that's a recovery stroke. So if a kid is able to roll over onto their back, which we teach them, the most non-exertional stroke available is the chicken star rocket, the elementary backstroke. So essentially, from a safety perspective, we're not only teaching kids to swim, we're teaching them to be safe around water, but we're also teaching them how in an emergency to buy themselves some time until somebody can get there. Because sometimes that's the name of the game. Kid doesn't have to be able to swim. Can they roll to their back and get breath and give a lifeguard an extra 30 seconds? Sometimes that's everything they need. So here we're working on that chicken star rocket, which is a non-exertional propulsion on their back, elementary backstroke. But again, the breath control is the huge piece. We're really stimulating that epiglottal reflex to work on being able to it's not just closing your mouth, it's closing that flap of cartilage to make sure, even if your mouth is open, that water's not going to get into your lungs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next step, when do you graduate that class and move up?
Great question. So level 1 and level 2 are all age-based. Level 3 through 8 are all skill-based. So from level 3, like I said, 2024, if you don't adapt with technology, the wave is going to crash into you. So we are technology focused. It's propelling us into the new age. We have an app. That's a different story, but all of our progress is tracked on an iPad. So my instructors are in there with iPads and they're tracking his progress. And as soon as he masters all the skills, it gets updated and you graduate, you go to the front desk. So level 3, there's certain, mastery skills we have to see to be able to master them. But the big things for level 3 is you do start to see a little bit of independent swimming. And then level 4, that you start to see even more independence. In level 4, we really take a hands-off approach. They should be essentially moving from kick scooper to freestyle. We start teaching them to pop up and get a breath. We start introducing backstroke kick, backstroke arms. And then the same standard procedure. They graduate from 4, they go to 5. We start introducing breaststroke kick. They go to 6, we start introducing breaststroke arms and butterfly. 7 and 8, all the way to swim team. We can take them all the way through flip turns and all of the strokes. We don't dive here, but we get them all the way ready for a competitive swim team if need be.
That is amazing. Cool. Yeah, that is pretty cool. I guess at what age is someone expected to be in that kind of 7, 8 class? What's your typical age of that class?
It all depends. I don't want to give you the answer like it all depends on the kid, which is true. But we see if kids are coming multiple days a week and they are working hard, you can see a 6-year-old in that level.
Wow.
We've also seen 10-year-olds in that level. We always think it's interesting when we see 3-year-olds in level 4, just because it's rare, but it's also a testament to that kid's hard work, because it's a lot of work to get to level 4. And we have about 4 or 5 kids who are 3 years old in level 4 right now. So it's a testament to the parents getting them here and the kids working hard and the instructors, but it can be done. So every kid is different in that sense that people's schedules are busy. If you take 2 weeks off, you're going to see that. But yeah, the levels sometimes correspond to age, but since it's based on skill, it's a mixed bag. We got some, I would say 7 to 10 probably in there.
That is amazing. That's awesome. Are there lifeguards at the pool when swim lessons are going on?
Yep. Here in Massachusetts, we have lifeguards at all times. A lot of our instructors are certified lifeguards. Me and my aquatics manager, we're LGI, so we can certify our lifeguards here. But yeah, we have lifeguards always. We also have deck supervisors who are present. So there's usually a lot of people on the pool deck, which is good.
Yeah. And how long are we expecting parents to be in the pool? And what class are parents no longer in the pool doing that active piece with their kiddo?
Level three. Level
Mm.
three is when the parents can get out of the water. Another good thing about level one and level two is it doesn't have to be the same parent every time. We encourage
Mm.
anyone who's going to be on that water safety journey, come take a class. Grandma's in town for the week and she's going to have baby at the pool. Come take a class. You're gonna learn so much just in one that you should take that class. But yeah, at 30 months, we get parent or guardian out of the water, and then it's just child with the instructor.
And then what's the ratio? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio or a 1 to 2,
4 to
3?
1. So it's
Four
a
to
4
one
to 1
ratio.
ratio. So our classes are never more than 4. We have a really flexible makeup policy. Going back to that app, a parent can cancel their own class for the day. Oh, we're not going to make it. We got a doctor's appointment. You can cancel up to an hour before it starts, and then you automatically get a makeup, and then you can schedule your own makeup. So the makeups never go away. So because of that flexibility, one, it's great. And two, it makes it so that sometimes there are less than 4 kids in the class and the
Mm.
class still runs. So there are times where there's only 2 kids in the class. They still get that 30-minute lesson. They just get a little bit more individualized attention that day, which is
That's
pretty cool.
awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. I think that maybe all of my oh no, I do have more questions. Sorry.
Go
Okay,
for it.
so I
No,
think
go.
my first last question is if we're not interested in having a little Michael Phelps and we just want our child
Sure.
to be able to swim appropriately. So I was trained by the American Red Cross and we were always
Hmm.
taught in order to have a child that was good to swim, they need to get in the water, have a breath, be able to change position, be able to go underwater, be able to float and be able to swim across the pool. Are those still the skills that parents want to make sure that their child is hitting in order to be considered a swimmer? Or what kind of things are we looking for, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Great question. We often get people saying like, when is my kid going to be independent? What do you consider
Totally.
independent swimmer? So our recommendation here is we recommend for you to be safe and independent to get through level 6. But like I
Okay.
said, you do start to see some true independence at level 4. And so what leads up to level 4? So I think your question is, what are the things you do to get that kid independent to level 4? So you highlighted almost all of them. I'm going to just with a pitchfork, breath control, right? Because
Yes.
the reason for that is if a kid won't put their face in, they're never going to be able to get horizontal in the water, right? Their head is up, their high knee is down. It's just that simple. They're going to be swimming uphill forever. It's not effective. So breath control being the big one, but just like you highlighted, similar to Red Cross, YMCA, a bunch of different places, and you want to be comfortable with that front float, which involves putting our face in. We want to be
Mm.
comfortable with that back float, which includes getting our chin way up. You don't want kids sitting in a chair, and that's because their chin's on their chest. So front float, back float, submersions, and that rollover. A big piece, if you can find an Aqua Tots, you'll have it built into the curriculum. But if not, also try to find a place that does some wall work, right? Because most often when a kid falls in, they're right by the wall. But what happens is that wave pushes them one foot out further. Like they fall in, then that wave pushes them further, and they can't reach back and get it. So you need to be at a place that really does focus on a little bit of wall work because it's not as simple as turn around to the wall. You might have to do a little kicking. You might have to do a little bit of propulsion with your feet to get you back up to that wall. So I would add that as another piece that I think is super important. Make sure you're at a place that's really focused on some safety skills too, because like you said, not everyone is training to be Michael Phelps, and that's totally cool. You can teach a kid to swim and also be very safe around water too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, I don't think I asked you this, and it was one of the most common questions that we
Okay.
got in our box from our audience. When it comes to bathing suit colors, there's a lot of noise online about choosing, quote unquote, the right bathing suit color. And I think there's that chart out there that people are really familiar with that some
Yep.
colors are harder than others. So when parents are choosing bathing suits or when you're getting your child, you're giving your child options on what bathing suit they want, what are some things that we need to be considering in order to be safe and make sure that we actually can scan and pick up on our child?
Yeah, and I see this reflected on socials all the time, and I've seen the chart, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, right? One, it's important to know what pool you're going to be going to. Here we have a plaster-based pool, so when you're looking at our pool, it looks very clear, but the bottom is white. So we're going to
Mm.
avoid here a lot of the light colored swimsuits, the whites, the muted yellows, and things like that. You might be at a pool with a liner. Let's say that pool has a liner, and that liner is very blue, right? You might want to avoid blues in that same hue. But ultimately, color is going to be the most important thing. Sometimes I like to encourage rash guards because it's extra color, right?
Mm.
What my good parents saying, does my kid have to be in a rash guard? Ultimately, it's comfort for swim lessons. I just want your kid to be comfortable. If you put a lot of lotion on your kid, we might need you to put them in a rash guard because they might slip out of our hands. Kids are the most lotioned humans in the world. But for a safety standpoint, rash guards are always a good call. SPF, obviously, but also because it's just more surface area that is covered. in color, right? So a bright color, a bright orange, a very neon yellow, a bright green, but something that it's not going to blend into the bottom of the pool. And it's also important to just remember what suit you're wearing that day. We live in a day and age where kids have a lot of different suits, right? So it's also, I know it sounds so simple, but was my son in the yellow suit today? Was he in the blue suit? And just remembering which one you put him in, that way you know what you're looking for. But those bright colors are huge, and it's site specific. A lot of pools, if you don't know the pool, aim on the side of caution and just give a bright color. We love bright oranges. We love some reds. We love bright yellows and greens, but something that won't fade in or get washed away by the color of the pool or under a wave. But those charts are a good starting place. Those are great resources. I love it when things like that go viral.
Absolutely. You can print that out, you guys. You can print it out or take a screenshot on your phone and take it with you when you go shopping. And my advice to you is just don't offer them the colors that you don't want them to have. Just don't offer them the colors that you think are a little bit too risky for your family, and pick colors that they can choose from and then let them choose what they want. Tyler,
Yeah,
this has been so incredible. I think I've asked
cool.
you all the questions and we've talked about all the things that are on my mind as a former lifeguard and as someone who aims to educate parents on topics that are not always talked about. Is there anything that you want to leave our audience with that maybe I didn't ask, or yes, we should definitely cover that? And there certainly doesn't have to be, but I always leave room for you to say, yeah, we didn't even talk about this.
I have nothing left, honestly. We covered everything I knew we were going to. I thought we got in
Nice.
some good conversation that wasn't planned, which is awesome. Love that. But no, we've really covered it all. We talked a little bit about who we are at Aqua Tots, which I think is awesome. No, I feel good. Thanks again for the opportunity. I think this is really great that we can get the word out. I think it's important. It needs to be ever present on people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, I'm sorry to our audience that I've never covered this before. I can't believe that has happened, but I'm glad to be having this conversation now. And I do think that it's super important. This will obviously be an episode that we air over and over again every year to remind people
Cool.
on how we can prevent this very common but preventable
Definitely.
unexpected and unintentional death of our children, just to make our home a little safer. This has been an awesome conversation. So, Tyler, if anyone wanted to connect with you or they wanted to visit the Aqua Tots in Norwood, or maybe there's teachers out there listening and they want you to come in and do a presentation for their children, if people
Sure.
don't live in Mass and are looking for Aqua Tots elsewhere, where can people connect with you, with your Aqua Tots, and then with Aqua Tots in general?
Yeah, we are in Norwood, Massachusetts. We are at 995 Boston Providence Highway, right here on Route 1 in the Auto Mile. We've been here for about 2.5 years. This is the first location for Aqua Tots in the New England area, which is really exciting. Aqua Tots as a brand has been around since 91. So if you're listening somewhere, you could probably find an Aqua Tots near you. Aqua Tots serves more than 150 communities in 14 different countries. So our curriculum's been
Wow.
translated to 9 different languages. So your best bet is going to be to find an Aqua Tots. There's probably some near you, or hopefully a decent driving distance. So you could contact me personally. I'm happy to respond to email tyler.bradshaw@aqua-tots.com. Reach out. If you're local and in this area and want us to come do a water safety presentation, we are happy to do it. We love it. It's when I still sneak away to do them sometimes because it just fills my cup. They're so much fun. So as far as on a national level, Aqua Tots can be www.aqua-tots.com. Our location is aqua-tots.com/Norwood. But you should be able to find us online, and I'm an easy guy to find too. So if you can't find me via email, I'm sure you can find me on the website and find a way to get in touch with me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here.
You're
We
welcome.
really appreciate it. All right, you guys, thanks for tuning in with Tyler and I. I will see you in the next episode. Be sure to follow Aqua Tots on social media, and you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe or the.birth.lounge. Until next time, head to your app store and download the Birth Lounge app for evidence-based childbirth education and data-driven postpartum support delivered straight to your phone. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly do value this community and I love hanging out with you. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent. It's an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who could use evidence-based information to help them have an informed and confident birth. I'd love to hear what you have to say and read your sweet words. By leaving us a review, you are helping other expectant mamas and their families find the podcast so that we can reduce birth trauma and improve maternity care in the U.S. one birth at a time. If you're interested in joining the Birth Lounge, go to thebirthlounge.com. If you want to connect with me on socials, you can find me at Tranquility by HeHe on all platforms. Until next time, stay educated, stay supported, stay confident. Bye!